But that being said, yeah, with Lane, it's, do you proceed with caution? I mean, I think this time off will help him.
But to get things jump-started here, early morning, let's check in with our good friend Eddie Kracz, Cafe Kracz, and see what he's cooking up on this bye week. Good morning, Ed. Thank you for joining us here on the Football Playbook. How are you doing during this bye week?
Oh, man, I'm loving it. Loving the time off, a little time to decompress. Not going anywhere like I'm sure some of the Eagles players are. They probably had their vacation booked when the schedule came out, figuring, we'll get a few days away. But not me. I'll still keep my ear to the ground and do what I can to keep fresh content flowing over there at Eagles Today.
I know SI.com, the good folks at Sports Illustrated, keep cracking the whip. Eddie Kracz is flowing with content over there at Eagles Today. And I want to get into some of that great content. Before I do, I mentioned I saw during a couple of the press conferences throughout the week, some of the coaches alluding to some of the players going home. I know Darius Slay mentioned he wanted to go see his son play a high school football game. Yeah. I think I heard Gannon yesterday say Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was departing and going to see some family. What is, for the player schedule at least, what is their routine going to be like here until next week? Typically Tuesday is the players' day off. I know Sirianni mentioned on Monday he might give the players Thursday off. Will they just depart for the weekend and funnel back next week, or what does that look like?
Yeah, I think Sirianni said on Monday that it was a work day. The players came in and they made the corrections from the game film from Sunday's win over the Cowboys, and then they're going through the self-scout, the coaches are, but the players are free to go, and they're going to be off until they're going to return to the field on Wednesday of next week. So they have a good week off here, and it'll look different for each player. I know some of the guys, I talked to Jordan Mailata, for instance, and after the game and his shoulder, that right shoulder injury that he had against the Jaguars, diving for the tackle on the pick six, didn't make it, but he hurt his shoulder, and he said his shoulder was killing him after that game against the Cowboys. He said it was really in a lot of pain. So he said he was just going to stick around and, rehab during this bye week. And I would expect some of the other players to do the same. Guys like Jason Kelsey, he lives in the area, has been here for years. He's got that left foot, or the left ankle, I should say, injury. So he'll stick around and rehab. And, that offensive line's been banged up, pretty much since week 2 or week 3 of the season. Isaac Siamalu, Landon Dickerson, they're all going through their own issues. Now Lane Johnson in a concussion. So I expect players like that have some injury issues to deal with aren't going to go anywhere except to rehab and treatment at the team's facility. But other guys will get away. Guys like Chauncey, like you said, Gannon mentioned on Tuesday that he saw Chauncey. He's on his way to get out of town. So, guys are going to leave town. They're going to try to put, I think, Rick, football a little bit behind them as much as they can, kind of recharge mentally, because when they come back out of this bye week, they have 11 straight games, which is a lot. That's a long haul. Now, you get kind of a break because you have that Thursday night game against the Texans, and then you don't play again until the following Monday. So you have that 11 days off. So that's kind of like a mini bye. But then after that, it's 9 games. So, coming out of the other end of this, it's going to be a long haul for this Eagles team, and it's tough to stay healthy in that when you have that many games coming up.
Not the most ideal bye week, but considering all the injuries to a banged-up offensive line, which is really considered the greatest strength of this team, we've talked about the depth and the quality of play, and I did my top 5 most valuable Eagles offensive players. 3 of them were offensive linemen, and you mentioned Jordan Mailata with the sling. It sounded like he's probably going to be wearing this sling or this brace for the rest of the season. I think the bigger question, though, going into the bye week is Lane Johnson. Getting him right. I saw Shane Steichen at the end of his press conference say Lane Johnson's health is the top priority. This is his 3rd concussion in 5 years, Ed. And we've seen kind of the trickle-down effect from the Tua concussion protocol. I mean, how realistic is it to think that Lane Johnson will just be back ready to go against the Steelers?
these guys know what they signed up for, right? When they decided to play football. And Hassan Reddick addressed this a couple weeks ago. That when you get your paycheck, you're happy you get your paycheck. You get to feed your family, your kids. It's your livelihood, and you're happy about it. But the risks. You understand what you signed up for. But that being said, yeah, with Lane, it's do you proceed with caution? I mean, I think this time off will help him manage his way through protocol, but 3 concussions in 5 years is pretty
Period.
significant.
Yeah.
And I thought, Rick, that there was a chance going into this season that this could be Lane Johnson's final year, because I knew he was frustrated with the ankle issue. He had 2 surgeries on it before he finally got it right, but he seemed to kind of, poo-poo that, if you will, when he said that, he's never felt better. He's, he wants to play. He feels like he's in his prime. So, he still wants to play, but now this concussion changes things. You hope. I think he'll be okay. I think they'll probably come out of the bye and he'll be starting against the Steelers. But you really have to hope that he doesn't suffer another concussion coming back, quickly, because then you have to wonder about his long-term future, and he may himself start to think, what? Do I really want to risk CTE? We've seen these players struggle with it after their careers are over. A lot of guys, unfortunately. And maybe that'll give him some pause and make him, reassess his future. But I think he'll probably play after the bye. I'm not 100% sure of that, but I think this week to get through this concussion will make him okay on the other side. But I don't think you're going to see him retire in midseason. I don't see that because of the 3rd concussion in 5 years. But something to keep an eye on, no doubt.
Yeah, scary stuff. And, we know about the mental health issues he's had in the past too. And I hate to say it, but you wonder on a bye week how much that gets into his head and his mental health. And he's an older player. He's been through injuries before. So, the fact that he was contemplating possibly retirement at the end of the season, you wonder what kind of thoughts creep into his head with 2 weeks off or 2 weeks before the next game. We're talking about Eddie Kracz, Eagles Today, Sports Illustrated, and a lot of great content on the website. It's funny. I tuned into our guy, Jeff Kerr, who does a great job on the morning show on JAKIB Sports YouTube channel. And I apologize. I forget the guest's name that he had on, both guys younger than us, Ed. And it's funny. I realized watching the segment, it is the 50-year anniversary of the 72 Dolphins. And there's a whole generation of football fans who have kind of, they've heard about the undefeated season, but they're not as prevalent, maybe maybe not as much in the limelight as when we were growing up. And I really enjoyed that article you did with the 72 Dolphins. And, they're going to be honored, I think, this weekend for the 50th anniversary team. There's still 4 Hall of Famers on that team still alive. And as you know, they like to pop the champagne after the final undefeated team goes down each season. So really, really enjoyed just highlighting some of those guys, and Larry Zonka, Bob Greasy still kicking. Of course, Mercury Morris is kind of the ringleader of the band. And, they said, hey, they're starting to fume inside their beards, Ed. They're getting a little bit antsy here with the Eagles. And I think the next 3 games are very winnable. So I think they're going to get to at least 9-0. And at that point, you really got to start thinking if undefeated season is a real thing on the table here.
Man, I'll tell you, it's a real long shot, though. I mean, like I said, this stretch of games they're going to play consecutively coming out of this bye, that's going to really be a test. And, each week it's more and more challenging. And, people thought, talking about that article, I got some feedback that, it's way too early to talk about this kind of stuff, these undefeated seasons like the Dolphins had 17-0 back in 1972. But, listen, the guys talk on a Zoom call on Tuesday. So what am I going to do? Wait until the Eagles are 10-0 to write about it? I mean, I wrote about it. I mean, maybe it's too early. It probably is too early, but I thought
never too early.
Right. And, listen, I thought their comments were interesting. Zonka was great. He was asked, who do you think could potentially beat the Eagles? And he said it'll be a team that nobody expects that will trip them up because, they have maybe a letdown or they're the way the game is so competitive now. The league, there's so much parity. So he says it could be a team that nobody expects. So when you look at their schedule, could they lose to the Steelers? I mean, who's going to play quarterback in that game? And the Steelers had a nice win against the Buccaneers, I think, last
Yeah.
weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah, good win at home. But maybe it's the Steelers. I don't think it'll be the Texans or the Commanders. But the Steelers are a proud franchise, right? They got torched by the Bills 38-3. They come back and they man up. They buckle up, as you like to say, and they won against the Bucs. So who knows? I mean, I know they play, and they're playing that game Sunday night against the Dolphins, where that 72 team is going to be honored at halftime. So they're playing a road game Sunday night, and then they're going to follow up with another road game here to Philadelphia. So that's kind of, it's tough duty for Pittsburgh. So I don't know. You could see the Eagles getting to 9-10-0, and then what? You have the Packers, the Titans, back-to-back weeks. That's no picnic. I just think it's going to be really hard for them to go undefeated, but it doesn't mean we can't talk about it, right? Or get some comments from the last team to do it. And it was a pretty cool conference call. Paul Warfield was on that call. Larry Little. I mean,
wow.
I was just starting to get into sports back then in 1972, and I love that team. I could name a bunch of guys from that team. Nick Buoniconti, unfortunately he's passed away, and Don Shula has passed away, and Jim Langer, their center, he passed away. Those are 3 Hall of Famers. So there's 4 Hall of Famers from that team still surviving, and all 4 of them talked on Tuesday. So they had some interesting things to say, and so I wrote about it.
No, I enjoyed it thoroughly, and that's great that they're having that game Sunday Night Football. I hope the TV broadcast does us justice and shows us some of that halftime celebration. I'd like to see it. A lot of times these TV broadcasts, they don't even bring you that part of the good. And I had the privilege of interviewing Larry Zonka about 15 years ago when I was working for ESPN, and he is one of the great sound bites. I could just talk football with Larry Zonka all day long, and man, the stories that come out of that guy's mouth and the personality. Wow, one of the great ones on and off the field.
Yeah. He made some really nice comments about, sitting in our rocking chairs, and, I want to applaud when these teams win and stay undefeated. And then he goes, well, what am I thinking about? They're coming to dance on our dance floor. Why am I applauding? I shouldn't be, I should be rooting against them. I mean, he was really engaging. He was yeah, you're right. I've never chopped it up with him like you had the pleasure to, but
man,
I've seen interviews. I've been in interviews with him, and he's just a fun guy to listen to.
Yeah. One of the all-time greats. Eddie Kracz, an all-time great here on the Football Playbook. Buckle up. It's the bye-week blues. Eddie doesn't know what to do with himself. You mentioned the Steelers. What is it going to be? Kenny Pickett, I think, is also in this concussion protocol.
Yes.
And he set up the Steelers to kind of win that game over the Bucs. Trubisky comes in and seals the deal. Captain come back there, and the Steelers pull off the W. Any inkling? Have you gotten that far? Have you peeked into, what's the progress been since Pickett's concussion or the protocol? Do you think it'll be Pickett? Might it be Trubisky? How do the Eagles game plan for this matchup?
Well, I would say, does it really matter who it is? I mean, I think,
Oh, the Bucs said the same thing, though.
I get it. We'll see who plays Sunday. It'll probably be Trubisky, I would guess. And if he comes out and beats the Dolphins, I mean, the Dolphins are limping along. They started 3-0, and they've lost 3 in a row now.
Yeah.
But if they come out and win with Trubisky, it's probably going to be Trubisky, and they'll keep Pickett. I mean, I know they want Kenny Pickett to kind of, assume the mantle here and be the guy. So, but if Pickett wins on Sunday, if he plays, it's hard to turn away from that coming into Philadelphia. Obviously, tough environment against an undefeated team. Do you really want to throw a rookie out there? I mean, they threw a rookie out there in Buffalo, though, so had no hesitation there, but it, kind of fell flat on his face there. Well, the team did. I thought Pickett did some okay things. But, yeah, I really haven't looked that far ahead to see who it could be. I guess I'm just going to wait and see who it's going to be Sunday night. And then, we can begin ramping up for the big interstate battle with the Pittsburgh Steelers here in Philadelphia. It'll be interesting, Rick, to see if TJ Watt, I don't know what his time frame is on returning.
Yeah, good one.
I think they said 6 to 8 weeks when he originally suffered the injury. So, he could be, maybe that's the week he comes back and plays against the Eagles. And that certainly makes a difference for that defense if TJ Watt's, hammering down from the edge. And if Lane Johnson may not play, I mean, then we have something really to talk about, but we're not quite there yet.
No, good point. That is something that would have to be accounted for. Let me ask you this then, because Kelsey, he kind of let the cat out of the bag when he was talking about Dillard the other day. He said, hey, it might be a good idea to just let him focus on one side, kick off the rust. It'll be a little bit easier, smoother transition to just focus on one side. So will Dillard get the start at right tackle if Lane Johnson can't go? Do we know?
No. Kels was talking about Jack Driscoll being able to kind of focus in on playing just right tackle.
Okay.
But Dillard, we all saw what happened when Dillard tried to play the right side a year or two ago. I don't think he's gotten any better at it. He can't play the right side. He's a left tackle, and that's it. He can't play any other position. And the only reason he's still hanging around is because he was a first-round pick. I think he's a very good left tackle. I think, you could potentially trade him maybe at the trade deadline. I've said this, that, listen, Driscoll, he's going to concentrate on the right side now. I mean, he came in and filled in at left tackle when Milata got hurt early against Jacksonville and had to miss the game in Arizona. And he did okay. He did well. I mean, the Eagles still won with him there, so he wasn't this great liability that cost them a game. But he's a better right tackle. He played right tackle all summer, backing up Lane Johnson. So now, like Kel said, you can kind of focus just on that side. You don't have to worry about the left side because Dillard is now here and he can be that left tackle. But I say watch out for this Brett Toth, however you say his last name.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Tore his ACL last regular season game last year. He's been recovering from that. We've seen him at practices that doesn't participate, but he's off to the side. We see him working out. He looks good. He looks fine. I've talked to him. He said he feels good. He feels like he's progressing. But, I think the Eagles could potentially trade Dillard if Toth is able to come back by the trade deadline, and then Toth becomes your backup left tackle. Or maybe he's your swing tackle like Driscoll potentially could be. But, Dillard, his contract's up. You're not going to get anything for him at the end of the year. And maybe you can get something for him if you can move him at the deadline. But you better make sure you have somebody that can play that position other than Jack Driscoll. And maybe Brett Toth will be that guy and allow them to possibly trade Dillard if they can find someone that might be interested in giving them what they want. But right now, it's Driscoll as the right tackle backup. Dillard's the left tackle backup. And you hope you don't need them against the Steelers. But if you do, listen, they all went to Jeff Stoutland University, right? They're all graduates of Jeff Stoutland University, like Jordan Mailata said. What a great quote. Jeff Stoutland. And the expectation is when you matriculate at Jeff Stoutland University, you better be ready to play. And, Dillard and Driscoll will be ready to play if Johnson and Mailata can't or something happens to them.
We're talking to Walt Clyde Frazier. I mean, Eddie Kracz with the vocabulary here, matriculate. He's using some fancy words on the football playbook. Eddie, I know you got to get out here, but you mentioned the trade deadline is right around the corner. We're seeing teams add reinforcements. The Ravens added Deshaun Jackson and JPP. I see the Steelers, who we just talked about, added our good friend Jason Huntley. Tack McKinley was cut by the Rams yesterday, but you mentioned Dillard. Could they dangle him and exchange, basically 1 year rental for 1 year rental? I see guys like Jerry Hughes down in Houston who has 4 sacks. He's, 34 years old, kind of hanging around a useless Texans ball club. We've seen what he's done for the Bills in the past. Robert Quinn for the Bears, same deal, a veteran defensive end that the Bears are going nowhere. Brian Burns from the Panthers, another guy that's talked about, rumored to be on the trade block. Do the Eagles make a play or explore anything here on the trade deadline, do you think?
Man, that's a good point. The rental for rental type player, maybe a veteran who wants to get out and maybe get into a winning situation where it might be, one of their last chances to win a Super Bowl ring like Jerry Hughes or, Robert Quinn in Chicago. I like him a lot, the Bears guy, and I love Brian Burns. I would love to see them go out and get Brian Burns. But you're talking about a different level player with Brian Burns compared to those other two. Burns
Sure.
is what,
More
23?
compensation you got to give up.
Yeah, he's 23, 24 years old. And by the way, he's going to need probably a new contract if you're going to give up something good to get him. And, you have to look at this salary cap situation with the Eagles. They have several players that are playing very good football on 1-year deals. They're not going to be here. Kaiser White, James Bradbury, Marcus Epps, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. These guys are all playing very, very good football, but their contract's up at the end of the year. So you add another guy like Brian Burns into that mix where he's going to need a new deal. You're really going to have to do some prioritizing to figure out which one of these guys you want to sign. And Miles Sanders, same thing, last year his deal. So, there's going to be some hard decisions that have to be made. And do you want to add another hard decision to that mix with Brian Burns? I would do it, right? I mean, listen, you're all in now. You're all in it to win it now. And Burns would really help you. And then you can cross that salary cap bridge and contract bridge when it comes down to it at the end of the season.
All right, last one. You could just give me a yes or no answer because I know you got to go. Would you sacrifice one of the 2 first-round picks that the Eagles have in the upcoming 2023 draft, either the Saints or the Eagles, straight up, one of those first-round picks for Brian Burns? You pulling the trigger?
No, I'm not pulling the trigger for a first-rounder. Not at all.
Okay.
I'm not touching that Saints pick. That could be a top 10 pick.
All right, the Eagles, though, that might be a pick 25 to 32.
Possibly, but still, listen, Howie loves those first rounders. He could do maybe something better on draft night or leading up to the draft. So I would hang on to those. If you can get him for maybe a second, maybe a Dillard thrown in there, then maybe. But I wouldn't give up a first rounder. Not at this stage, not at the trade deadline. The offseason, different story.
All right, Ed, man, appreciate the intel, man. Great insight. Keep it going on the Eagles today during the bye week over there at si.com/NFL/Eagles. And we'll try to check back in with you next week on the Cafe Kracz edition.
My pleasure, Rick. See ya.
All right. There you go.